We've got a couple of news stories, which include lots of Modiphius news about Star Trek Adventures, Dune, and a new Fallout RPG, and applications being open for the Cyberpunk by Asian Creators Game Jam. So that's a cool thing. Remember, before we get into that, if you've got news that you'd like us to talk about, you can send it over to our Discord channel, finding that at shadowcasters.network/Discord. But let's get to talking about the news. Before we talk about the two things that I just talked about, we just got something that Oz dropped into the news that he wanted me to mention, which is it's a, what would you call it? It's a bundle on itch.io, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do they have like a name for these types of bundles that they create, or is it just a?
I mean, it just depends, right? So, like in this case, this is a bundle of over $100 worth of Cyberpunk's games and music and zines and other things from a collection of LGBTQ and people of color, independent creators,
Right.
and they called it "Be a Better Cyberpunk."
Right.
The Be a Better Cyberpunk bundle, because they basically said it's cyberpunk without the transphobia, racism, and labor exploitation.
Right. It's a response directly to the game that just came out and a lot of the criticism, public criticism that's been going on about that. So they put this together to try to sort of do something positive in light of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for $60 or one Cyberpunk AAA title, you can. And actually, if you are, they also have a sister bundle that's for $10. You can purchase a lot of Cyberpunk content that you can bust out to the table.
Yeah, very
so
cool. Definitely support great things like that. It'll be running until December 24th, so go over to itch.io. I'm sure we'll put a link to that in the notes here for the main show. But yeah, itch.io, check it out. It's called Be a Better Cyberpunk. All right. So, speaking of Cyberpunk, and we've got plenty, it's Cyberpunk week, right?
It really is.
So, we're going to be talking more Cyberpunk later in the show, too. But speaking of Cyberpunk, applications are, and speaking of itch.io, applications are open for the Cyberpunk Asian Creators Game Jam. It's a game jam that's being hosted on one of our favorite websites here at the SCN, itch.io. In case you don't know, game jams are events that anyone can host, really, which encourage game designers and writers to get together and, jam and make games. The one that we're talking about now is called Cyberpunk by Asian Creators Game Jam. It is what it sounds like. It's a 2-month-long game jam encouraging Asian game designers who want to make their own games in the cyberpunk genre. And the rules for submission are listed on the page, but some of them include you have to be of Asian heritage or currently live in Asia and don't consider yourself an expat. It can be any kind of tabletop RPG. It can be a standalone item or standalone RPG. It can be a hack, a supplement, anything like that. It can also, it of course, has to be in the cyberpunk genre. Otherwise, it's not qualified for this. But it also has to have, I like this part, it has to have safety tools included, or it has to include how to find safety tools for playing an RPG. So that's really cool. It doesn't restrict games to only brand new things either. It allows submissions of already existing games. So I thought I wanted to bring it up not only as a way to spread the word to Asian creators and about these types of things, but also because this is a cool place to raise our awareness of Asian creators. There are already several submissions out there, including one that you're going to be talking about later, Oz, Balik Bayan.
Mm-hmm.
So whether you're hearing about it and you want to create for it or not, you should check it out, because these are all games that are made by Asian game creators making stuff for Cyberpunk. So really cool.
Yeah, and you can go and the submissions are just being posted, so you can already see what people have made and released already, as it's going. So you don't have to wait for anything. You can just go and visit the page.
Right. All right.
And I'm going to just say Oz has a person to highlight who I think is awesome with something we're going to be talking about later. I'm just going to do a shout out for Takuma Okada on itch.io as an Asian tabletop game designer. Their stuff is really cool and innovative and accessible.
Awesome. All right, so the last piece of news for the day before we get on with the rest of the show is there's a ton of Modiphius news. Modiphius has some news about a few of their tabletop RPG products. They're extending their license. First, they're extending their license for Star Trek Adventures to include the newest shows that are on the CBS All Access, Star Trek Discovery and Picard. There's not a lot of info yet on what the products are going to look like, but there will be products based on those shows, and we'll hear about them soon. The next bit of Modiphius news is that pre-orders are now open for the Dune RPG called Dune Adventures in the Imperium. The available books include 3 collector's editions that are themed around the houses in the Dune universe, as well as a player's journal, dice, and a GM screen. So that's cool. And finally, in the last bit of Modiphius news, the Fallout tabletop RPG. Who am I? RPG.
Fallout RPG Bunker.
The Fallout RPG has been announced to be released in Q2 of 2021. Again, a lot of these don't have a lot of information. This one doesn't either. Except that it's going to be based on Modiphius's 2D20 system, translated onto a modified special system. And if you don't know, and who doesn't, special being an acronym for the set of stats that you get in a Fallout game. So they've kind of molded it around that. It's going to include a core book, dice set, GM toolkit, starter set, and a collector's edition box set. There's not a price that's been announced yet. Also, it should be noted that this is not the RPG that they talked about that is related to the tabletop strategy game in the Fallout Warfare or something like that. It's not that. This is its own standalone one that I think, based on the cover that they had, it showed a Vault Tech uniform with the 111 on it, like Vault 111, which is the Fallout 4 Vault. I wonder if it's if the setting is in the Fallout 4 setting, the city I suddenly can't remember the name of. But
New Vegas, no?
No. Fallout. That was Fallout. That was around Fallout 3. Fallout 4 was around Boston, and
is that Baston?
Baston. Can you say it any other way? But I can't. What is that place called? Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
I had a thought about
Tri-state area.
The tri-state area.
I don't know. The biggest landmark I can think of is Diamond City. So
there you go.
Who cares what it was before?
I can understand and even get excited about tabletop RPGs set in a game established by a video game, like set in a world that's established by a video game.
Rule.
Yeah, especially a sandbox one like Fallout. It's an easy sell to me, but while I play the game, and the reason is because while I'm playing the game, I'm actively thinking about me in that world, right? So to me, it's an easy sell to translate to a tabletop RPG. I've already got my character in my head, how I fit in, all that kind of stuff. But I have a much harder time getting excited about tabletop RPGs that are based in TV or movie properties. Do you guys have that? Because a lot of my enjoyment of those properties I feel like is tied to the characters that are already established.
Aside from Star Wars, which I think I've been putting myself in that universe since I was a little kid. But I think you're right. Like the idea of playing video games is that I'm already in there. Like I'm actually playing in that world already. When I watch a movie, I'm observing. And so, yeah, I think you're right. It doesn't quite translate.
I think it depends on how big and well developed the setting of the TV or movie property is. If it's too tied into the characters and their story, and it's only about that, then if we're talking like Jupiter Ascending, right? There's no room for anybody to do anything in that world other than super main character from the movie. But Star Wars, there's so much kind of hinted at and fleshed out, or Middle Earth, or Star Trek for another example.
Star Wars and Middle Earth, those are really good examples of one I feel like I could get into, and I think it is because that property is so much about, like, the world is the main character, right? And so
say the same thing about Dune, though.
That's fair. And I'm not saying so. Obviously, Dune. I never read or watched any of the Dune.
If you were super into Dune, you would probably maybe you might have a different perspective.
A Dune sayer. I see what you did there. Well, I'm also into Firefly, but I could never. I feel like I can't get excited about the Firefly RPG.
I'm on the fence about
one of my best campaigns I've run was using Neverwinter Nights, was using a total conversion, and it was a Firefly campaign.
Neverwinter Nights Firefly. That's awesome.
It had like a spaceship tile set that somebody made, and I had like DM tools that I could like shake the ship or make sparks fly out of something.
Fantastic.
We narrated and did like D20 rolls to do the spaceship combat stuff, and then let the D20 system play out, the personal combats. And we had it was just such a fun experience. I tied in some of the events of the films and the show, but mostly kind of let them do their own thing. And it was just, I had a great group of players too.
Yeah. I think UGE Plex and you guys, honestly, are all convincing me that it really is about world building, because UGE Plex in the chat says that video games are just, I think, easy, especially open world sandbox type video games. They do a really good job of defining the world. That's like one of their big goals, right? So I think it really just is about world building, because you keep naming like UGE Plex said Star Wars, and okay, yeah, you're right. I totally have played the Star Wars tabletop RPG, and that's based around a movie and now a bunch of television and stuff. So you're right.
But I will push against this, because I can think of one example off the top of my head that is completely contradictory to everything that's already been discussed. We played the Leverage RPG, and we had a blast. So that's based on a TV show about a group of thieves in a modern day regular setting.
Sure.
And I think the reason that worked is because we made our own band of thieves in that style and philosophy that those characters in the TV show espoused.
I would argue, though, also that the reason it worked for me is because I've never watched an episode of Leverage. So,
but I think in the case of Leverage, the thematic concept of the show kind of becomes the world building thing that fits that role and other stuff. So Leverage is super about those characters and what they get up to, and it's your enjoyment of the show is so tied into watching Elliot have to deal with something that's outside of his skill set, or I don't know, it's been a while since I've seen an episode now, but
also My Little Pony. I know you enjoyed My Little Pony.
Yeah, okay, you guys, you're right. You're right. There are a lot of examples of television and movie properties which I totally could, because I love the My Little Pony RPG.
I know you did.
And I still play that with my kids.
But you got to customize your own pony.
Right.
That's such an easy sell. I mean, that's an aberration.
I want to run a Care Bears RPG.
I mean, I guess for me, my first ever RPG was because my parents totally brought into the Satanic Panic stuff. When I heard about D&D, I was like, that's what I'm here on this planet to do. And like, oh no, I can't do it. And then I was into the Ninja Turtle cartoons and comics, like every other kid my age, and so I found my way into role-playing games through TMNT and Other Strangers. Now, granted, that RPG is totally based off the comic books and not the cartoon or the films, but it's all wrapped up. And my first ever role-playing character I made was Howler, a mutant wolf. And in my first adventure, I killed the Shredder by throwing dynamite at him. It was fucking awesome.
That's great.
Can I say that on YouTube?
It's too late. It's done.
All right.
It's been said.
There's no taking it back.
All right. Well, you guys have proven me wrong. I'm glad. That's why we have these conversations, is to illustrate how wrong I am. And you guys have done that. So that's going to be it for the news for this week. Again, if you've got some news items you'd like us to talk about, then get them over on our Discord server, shadowcasters.network/Discord. Drop them in there, and we'll try and talk about them.